It was really hectic. We were pushing the boundaries, obviously, with Major League Baseball. When we make a change, it's obviously could affect people's livelihood. So yeah, it's stressful. It's something that keeps you up at night. I don't know how much longer I'm going to do this, but it's the scariest when you have a vision that is outside the norm.
Photographer of the year, let's hear it for Dan Shelley, Shellda Photos.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Shellda Podcast, where I got him. I finally have the president of Major League Paintball on the show, Tom Cole. And man, hot off of a crazy last few weeks with going on ESPN2 live for the very first time. I think I heard you were moving. You must be exhausted.
Yeah, we try and do a lot, that's for sure, in a short period of time. So
yeah, well, thank you for carving out some time to jump on the show. We've definitely got a lot of questions that we'll dive into. One about the ESPN deal, about the whole entire event that weekend, and then we'll shift gears to really just talk about you as a person. But in the industry, we've got to plug our sponsors before we dive into the good stuff. Hormesis has been with me since day one, and I think we've got some really cool things we're working on this year together. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. But there's a project we're working on that hopefully should be coming out within the next few months here. So stay tuned to my page and to the Hormesis page. And then secondly, I had ProDNA sign on about a month or two ago. And I was like, man, what do I plug for this show? Like, I've got Tom Cole on. This is a really big one. What can I talk about from ProDNA? And I was like, oh, I'll talk about my waterproof socks because you're the rain guy. You're known for making it rain at all the events.
That's pretty good. That is pretty good.
Yeah. So anyways, like the ProDNA socks are unreal. Anytime it rains, like those are in my gear bag, and I don't leave home without them. And then the best thing about that is you can grab those right at bfpgear.com. Junior and Gina Brown there. They were just featured all over ESPN, having Paintball Fit and Dynasty, and seeing BFP gear all down the jerseys. Like, what a great opportunity for them as a growing brand.
No, and they've been great too. So
yeah, we've talked about a little bit on the show of I think it was maybe the Vegas Summit show where we were setting up the night before, at midnight or 1 o'clock, and here walks in Gina just to roll up her sleeves and help us set it all up.
Yeah, she's a force to be reckoned with. That's for sure.
She is for sure. She is. I think she's the one that keeps Junior in line.
she keeps half of us in line. It's not just Junior. She's got a list.
Yeah. So for the folks that are tuning in on YouTube, obviously you can see Tom's background. The folks that are tuning in listening, you've got the new background. You've got the first ever live ESPN2 background with the field inside the stadium. Tell me about that weekend.
It was cool. I mean, it was really cool on many levels, right? One, we were in Disney proper inside of a stadium. It's been a long time since we've been in a stadium. We did a lot of events more inside of parking lots, like near stadiums, but never really in the stadium. And we're on a baseball diamond, which is kind of unique. But overall, it was like you got chills up your spine when you kind of went inside and kind of like it felt cool. And then to be on Disney proper, I think it's one of the few times shooting sports have been on Disney proper. Definitely the first time in a long time that shooting sports have been on Disney proper. And I say Disney proper because we were in the parking lot back in the PSP days. We had done some stuff in the parking lot, which they've now paved. But it was cool. It was great to be there. And we had a lot of fans. Like, it was pretty crazy how many paintball people came out to watch. It felt good, and they were great. They're very passionate. They were screaming and yelling the whole time. It was great.
Yeah, it was cool. I think we were all obviously tuning in and wondering how it was going to go, right? And that was one of the first things I picked up on was the fans in the background. And there were a few shots where like you can kind of see some fans, and you could see they were wearing a lot of different paintball shirts, whether they were Dynasty or Fit brand. And so it was cool to see that like fans were really showed out for this.
Yeah, no, it was impressive. Very impressive. Early morning on a Friday, so yeah, it was great.
Yeah, totally. What were your thoughts on the actual new format?
It was hectic. It was really hectic. I mean, I really enjoyed the Ryan clock. I thought that was good. We definitely didn't give them enough time between points, which made it a lot more hectic. And then the field was also a little small, so the points played fast. So it played too fast. And it's been a theory that I've had for a while that like everybody keeps telling us fast, fast, fast. And I think too fast at some point in time becomes unwatchable. I don't think this was unwatchable, but I do think that it would have been better if it was slowed down a little bit.
For sure. Is that something when this deal came up with ESPN and Disney that they said, hey, we want like fast paced, action packed?
No, not at all. We had a lot of autonomy in how we were designing this. And I had a couple things go through my mind. Like, we could have just played two teams and had one match, and played a longer match. And then we could have controlled it, slowed it down a little bit. But the problem with that was I was afraid that the game was going to get out of whack as far as like a team starting to get ahead. And then once the team starts to pull ahead, the other team starts playing extra hard to try and catch back up. And a lot of times it just puts them further behind. And so what I was worried, we end up with one of these 15-3 games or something like that, and it would make people tune off. So we tried to keep it so that we were constantly selling the next product, like, hey, we got Dynasty versus Red Legion, we got Fit versus Impact, and we got the winners of those playing right after this commercial, you know what I mean? So it was like kind of trying to build our own little story and our own little event there. So I think on that level it worked well. I would have liked to have given some more time.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, whenever you have anything like this, that you try something new, you always have the haters, right? Like people that are just gonna shit all over what you're doing. But in order to innovate something, you have to try something new. And I think what I've always loved about you and your approach that I don't know a lot of people really understand is when you're doing something like this, your mind is, and correct me if I'm off here, but like, what can I take away? What can I learn from this? How can we improve to make the next event better?
Yeah, I was talking to my ops guy like the first day, and I was like, next time we should really hook our stuff to here and here. And he was like, let's get through this one first there, brother. Get through this one. So, yeah, I mean, we're always trying to do that, and we're always trying to try. The only way to have people not talk shit is not to do anything, right? So, and that's not who we are. So we're going to keep doing stuff for sure.
Have you had a chance to go back and rewatch the broadcast?
I have not. I'm hoping to do that this week, actually. Yeah, so no, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah,
I haven't seen it after the fact.
I think that's always like the tale, right? Is when you're at an event in person, you're experiencing it completely different from how people are experiencing at home. And I've asked a bunch of my followers like through Discord, and I've had a YouTube poll up for a little bit, and I've heard a lot of people say it was way too fast. And I agree. I sat there with my wife Amanda. We watched it. We had our two kids here, and I know the sport in and out, and like I even had a hard time like, hey, there's a major, like I think this is what's happening on, but like I don't know why so like it was a little too fast for that. But the thing that I did notice, which I think is super important, obviously I grew up a huge Dynasty fan. She's now part of that program and helps out in the pits. When they were playing, we felt that almost I don't want to say it's anxiety, but that like that pull where you're like, oh, come on, like keep pulling away. Or, when the team was coming back, you're like, oh, this, like, there's no way they're going to come back. Like you felt those feelings you do when you watch like your NFL team or your baseball team.
Yeah, and I've been saying for a while, like live sports is really where it's at, right? Like that's what TV wants. That's what we have to be able to deliver. And I think it came across, right? I've gotten more messages about this show than any other show we've been a part of. Way more than the ESPN show we did last year. Now, there could be a lot of reasons for that, time slot, marketing, all that stuff. But I think some of it was because no one knew who was going to win.
Yeah.
And no one knew what it was going to look like, right? So it was a compelling story live. And we pulled it off. So I was happy about that, right? So
yeah, totally. And that's where like you're spot on, right? Like live has to be the way. Because it has
to be the way.
If you know the winner of it, it already takes the excitement out of watching it.
Right.
And, as I'm sitting there watching the whole show, I'm like, wow, Tyler Harmon is just on an absolute tear. Like he was just on a whole nother level that whole entire day. And so I'm thinking that's the storyline from this. And then the very last, point or two, when Blake doesn't make it to the box, like that's the storyline. If this were the NFL and the next morning on SportsCenter, that's all you would hear about is that one little moment where like it could have made or break it. And then you have a whole panel of people discussing back and forth of, well, if they did this, they could have pulled it off. Good.
Yeah, it's funny. I even saw someone like post that we like, give spoiler alert right on our two of the live scores. And I'm like, it's live, like it's out there. And I think you lose your most passionate fans when it's not live because they already know exactly what happened. They've already so tuned in. By the time they watch it 3 months later, it's now old news, way old news.
Hey, super quick, everybody. Just want to take a quick moment and say thank you so much for everyone who has shown support and subscribed to the podcast. This thing is growing like crazy. And so if you haven't yet, take a moment, hit that subscribe button. It means a lot. All right, back to the show. Well, actually, before I ask that, have you heard any feedback yet from ESPN about viewership or how it went?
So far, and one thing that's interesting is this was actually a Disney production. So ESPN, and I don't know how it works on the back end, but last year we dealt with Disney ESPN almost the entire time. This time there was a point where they basically handed us off to Disney because Disney was the production company.
Yeah.
And we did it on Disney property, and Disney obviously owns ESPN in some form. So, but the Disney people seem super happy. They seem really excited. They were great to work with. You're always apprehensive when you're going to go work for a big company like that. And, you think the worst, and they were actually really amazing, really amazing. So,
wow. When you were at the event, did you kind of get a feel for, because I know there were other sporting events happening like in that venue.
Yep.
Did you feel like paintball had a precedent around everybody else?
Yeah. So, and actually funny, I actually went to last year's Ochos to the live showing just to see what it was going to be like, because we were always in planning that this was potentially going to happen. So we went and watched how all the other live sports, and yeah, I don't want to brag, but paintball crushes all those other things. You know what I mean? Like there might've been 30, 40 people watching all the other sports, where we had 300 to 400. Right. And as soon as our crowd left, everybody left. As soon as our games were over, all of our people kind of left. Wow. So, I think I think Disney's going to notice that it was definitely more of a crowd thing than everything else.
Yeah. Just going on social media during the event and even before, during, and after, like it seemed like the whole entire community got behind sharing everything, pushing the content, sharing how to watch it, how to rewatch it.
It was amazing. And there was even, the storyline was really good, and people were defending it. Any of the decisions we made, people were out there trying to just keep a good foot forward. You know what I mean? So, and that's important, especially when you're dealing with ESPN and Disney. We don't want to look like we all have doubts that it's not going to succeed. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of people that are just put that, they'll put, there's no way this is going to work, and no way this is going to lead to anything. And I'm like,
for sure.
Negative Nancy's.
You always have them, right? You always have the haters.
You always have them. That's for sure.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to talk to any of the players that played the event? Like, I'd be curious what they thought of it.
I did. It's pretty resounding. The people that lost weren't happy. The people that won were ecstatic. I think everybody was happy for the opportunity. It was a big ask, right, for the players. And I knew that going into it, that I was expecting these people to travel halfway around the country for basically what could be 10 minutes of paintball. Yeah. And they did it, and they were great. And so there was some stuff that, if you get a bad call, I think that got a bad call, right? One of the plays, right? And there's no fixing it. It was just a train right over top of you. If you weren't, like, you had to put your next 3 bodies out there. You couldn't even talk. Yeah. So that's some of the stuff that I would like to fix. So I'm sure they weren't thrilled with what happened on the field, but I think overall they seemed really happy with the fact that we had the opportunity. And it's, it's small steps. It's like, I tell everybody, it's like making Sunday for the first time, right? That's not where you wanted to end that, but you just don't come out and win right away. No one does, right? Pitt's probably the closest, and they were, spent a year not winning, right? So yeah, I think it's all steps in the right direction.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, some of my takeaways were, I saw instant replay happening, like live. I was like, wow, we need that aspect of it. Like, that was a game changer.
Yeah. And actually, Kevin, our CFO, he was in the control room where they were doing it. He said that there was a lot of times where they just couldn't pull up the next, the instant replay or the good move or whatever, because the next point was getting ready to start. So
too fast. Yeah.
So we learned a lot there.
Yeah. Awesome. Talk to me about the ball, the actual paintball itself, because it was so easy to follow. The bright yellow ball and shell was amazing.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you who made it, but because it was a non-denominational event. Yeah, it was bright. It was good. I wish I could say who it was, because they went out and did a lot of that on their own. So I was pretty happy, very happy with that.
Is there anything that you're going to take away from this event to potentially look at NXL for next year?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple things. One, we now know how to put up an event basically anywhere very rapidly, right? So we kind of got that process down. I mean, we have a great operations group. I don't know if Matthew, they are on point, right? And so they crushed this thing. So now I feel more confident pulling this thing off almost anywhere. So there's a chance we could have some more spectacular venues. And I do think 3-man was fun. It was quick to understand, easy to watch, yada, yada, yada. So I envision 2 parallel opportunities for everybody, 3-man and 5-man X ball. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm hoping to be.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it just opens the door for so much opportunity for where the sport's going to go now.
Sure, and it actually gives us 2 products to sell, right? So if ESPN says I want 3-man and NBC says I want 5-man, it gives us a parallel, like I said, a parallel universe to kind of run both things through.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, and I caught myself too, is everyone says this is an ESPN deal, and obviously you mentioned the Disney part of it. I've had my kids here all summer, and we're obviously watching a lot of Disney products. And Mickey cartoons came up, and there's actually a Mickey cartoon where they're shooting a paintball gun in it. So I was like, oh, there's already a Disney tie-in with paintball.
Yeah, no, that is pretty good. I mean, we've been kind of around Disney forever, right? Our first year at the Gaylord Palms location, a bunch of Disney executives stopped out and talked to us about what we were doing and stuff like that. So, I mean, they're just normal people, right? You think of Disney being this big company, but it's just made up of a bunch of normal people.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it sounds like the event went absolutely incredible. I'll be excited to hear, like, when you officially hear from, the partners over there, like what the numbers were, to see, how we were for viewership and whatnot. I think that'll be some pretty telling numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I felt like the whole industry and the whole was behind it, right? The whole community.
Yeah.
The community was definitely behind it. I think a lot of people watched it.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say on it is the commercials that were put together for it. Like that one with Tyler was unreal, like promoting, World Cup, and specifically Sunday. I noticed that too, to get everybody there for the busy day. That was really well done.
Thank you.
Talk to me about being a president of a league. That's something that I think not a lot of people will ever experience in their life. And being a president of a now brand that's just exploding.
I appreciate the exploding part. It's interesting. There's a lot to it, right? Obviously, there's and every day it becomes more. But I got lucky that I kind of, both me and the league and the sport, really, we kind of all grew up together, right? So if you would have put me in this role when I first started, or if I'd had to jump in this role, it would have been impossible, right? But when we started, there's only like 20 teams playing the whole circuit back in the day, and so I've kind of grown up in the sport, and kind of, even with the NXL, we've learned a lot, right? And we're trying to treat this like a true professional sport, kind of trying to, I watch what other leagues very closely, actually, what a lot of the other leagues are doing, what the other leaders in their industry are doing. So I just try and follow that, kind of go through it, but it's a lot, Plus we run Europe, we run Latin America events, we run the ICPL, and then the NXL in the US. So it's a lot going on.
Yeah. And I think, what you do, whenever you meet somebody for the first time, one of the typical questions is like, hey, what do you do for a living? What's your Monday through Friday, right? What's your 40-hour work week? Yeah. And I can imagine you're blowing past 40 hours every week.
I'm definitely blowing past the 40, that's for sure. And it is interesting. It's a showstopper when you tell them, you run a professional paintball league, for sure. That's kind of like everybody wants to hear more about that. My neighbor, I told him just the other day, I just met my neighbor, I guess, about a year ago, and he was like, what do you do? And I said, I run a professional paintball league. He goes, that doesn't sound very hard. And I was like, no, not as bad as you think. So everybody thinks it's the dream job. And it is a dream job, right? It is. I am doing what I love, so it's pretty good.
Yeah, and that's actually something we talked about on the show a few episodes back, where somebody had got their dream job in paintball and quickly found out there's the dream aspect of it, and then there's the actual job aspect of a dream job.
Yeah. Yes, there's a little bit of that both. I mean, it's funny because, like, I guess I'm really at driving, right? I'm the one steering the ship per se, right? So that part's pretty cool. Obviously, there's stress. You don't want to let everybody down, right? And everybody that I know is in paintball, right? So, like, every one of my friends, every person that I basically have grown up with is in paintball. So if I steer the ship wrong, I'm shipwrecking a lot of people. You know what I mean? So not a lot of other jobs are like that. So
speaking of that, I've talked with this at length with a lot of folks, is paintball is obviously a very small community, and a lot of friends end up turning business partners and business colleagues, and sometimes you're working with deals, and sometimes you have to end deals with who are your friends. Talk to me about what that's like, where all of your friends are essentially like you're driving what could be their career, what driving is their livelihood. Like, that's got to be a lot of pressure, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's a little bit of pressure for sure. And I mean, everybody that works with me is kind of our friends, right? We grew up playing paintball together, or we've been around the industry forever, right? So it definitely makes some decisions harder for sure. But it does also creates that, I know I can rely on these people because we've been doing things together forever. So that side of it's there. But it's it's like really the industry. A lot of people's jobs are derived from how well we do as a sport, right? And we're kind of like that tournament side of it. So when we make a change, it's obviously could affect people's livelihood. So yeah, it's stressful. It's something that keeps you up at night. That's for sure.
I can't even imagine that stress. I mean, that's, whenever you hear any interviews from a CEO or a business owner, they always think about their employees and how they're responsible for their families at that point. There's actual tangible people behind that.
Yeah, and it's the scary thing is like I believe in vision, right? And I don't necessarily like the whole blended thing, right? And you've been around me enough. I ask a lot of people a lot of opinions, right? I'm constantly asking stuff, but I don't believe you should get 5 people together to kind of make a committee and then kind of like make a lot of compromises to do it. You find kind of what everybody thinks and you kind of drive that, but it's the scariest when you have a vision that is outside the norm and you basically decide to push that vision forward. Like the no Americans in Europe kind of is one of the visions that I kind of did that was kind of controversial. No one that I talked to liked it, right? The Europeans seemed apprehensive. The Americans didn't like it, but I firmly believed that it was going to be good for the long term. And I did it, but that's the scary ones, right? Those are the scary ones when you're going against the grain. It's easy when everybody says, let's do what everybody wants, right? But it's scary when it's going against the grain, and it is.
I mean, every great product that we use every single day at some point was a brand new idea and had a lot of people that said that's probably not going to work out.
Yeah, exactly.
And it needed to take one person to have that vision and belief and to drive that forward amongst all the hate.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everything, right? I mean, if you and that's why I always look back, like, like the president of IBM one time was like, it's ridiculous to think everybody's gonna have a computer in their house. There's all these famous things that people have said that just didn't come true, who were supposed to know everything. So about that category, right? So you got to take everything with a grain of salt, what people tell you. That's for sure.
What has being a president of a league or leagues taught you about yourself, like over the years?
That's a good one. That is tough.
I told you I was going to hit you with the hard ones on this one.
I've learned that I let stuff roll off my back. That's for sure. I do get frustrated. I can't say that I never get like down a little bit when people talk a lot of crap or when they're wearing you out about something. But like the Philly fields, right? Like when we had dirt at Philly, that bothered me a lot. Luckily we had some memes out there that perked me up a little bit, but I've learned that I'm pretty resilient, right? And I stay excited. It's funny. I was in the UK. I think that was our last year. I was in the UK, and a friend of mine gave me a magazine from way back in the day, and kind of was like, "Here, you're in this magazine." And I read the article, and it was a little like synopsis about me, and I'm reffing, and it says, Tom is one of the most optimistic people you'll ever meet, probably too optimistic, And I've kept that, right? So that's why I realize I'm resilient. I don't really get down too much. You got to stay hyped up, right? You can't get kind of negative, you know what I mean? And it's easy, right? A couple things go wrong and everybody telling you this and that, yada, 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 right? And some point in time you get frustrated, but yeah, you got to let it roll off your back.
Yeah. What a success story right there. I don't know if people really honed in on that. Like if you talk to any, large CEO or somebody from a very famous company and you hear that person say, I started as an advisor or I started on the frontline employee and they worked their way up. Like that's your success story. And you kept true to yourself throughout the whole entire process.
Yeah, I never doubted that this is what I wanted to do, right? Like at 16, 17, this is what I wanted to do. And I started playing paintball back then, and then I've reffed and I've done basically every job in the industry. And so now I'm here, yeah. And I like it. I love it.
What's something you would give to, because we've got a lot of people that want to work in the league or work in one in the league, but 2 in paintball, and they would love to make that their career. What advice would you give to that person listening?
It's hard. I talk this with some of my friends all the time, right? Like there's a group of us that kind of came up in a certain era and we really haven't relinquished those jobs. And so, there's not a lot of upward mobility, right? So we've kind of stagnated a little bit, but you just got to get into some of the entry level jobs to kind of make a difference and kind of like put yourself out there and kind of make it happen. I mean, there's a couple people, that Aaron Bennington, for one, I'll give him a bone there. Like he was just a young kid and he was reffing and he had an incredible drive. He was going to make it happen. Right. So, and now he, doing all the different things that he does, right. Runs a league and works for Sup Air, and he has all sorts of careers outside of that. But, you just got to really get in there and make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's similar to the advice that I give, any new photographer that reaches out to me and they're like, hey, how do I get on the pro field? And I tell them, one, you've got to be consistent with your work, but two, it's the relationships that you build, because your personal brand becomes your identity amongst this really small community.
Right. Yeah. No. And we've had people, like, I don't know how much longer I'm going to do this, but at some point in time, you have to find someone to kind of replace me, right? Whether we do that internally or through somewhere else, right? And people just got to be out there and kind of, in those roles. I mean, you think about it, like almost everyone that's been doing this has been doing this a long time. Look at Mike Hinman. I mean, I don't know how many years he's been running the league, right? But it's a long time. So yeah, we give it up kicking and screaming, that's for sure.
Yeah, that was actually one of my questions, is, whenever that day comes, whenever you're ready to hand the reins over to somebody, has that thought crossed your mind yet of what that timeline is like and who potentially would be a successor?
I have not thought about who a successor is. I've not really thought of a timeline. I think I got a solid 10 years left. I guess unless Disney would have canceled that event, I probably would have had about a week left.
This would have been your goodbye show.
Yeah, I mean, I always equate my job to a lot like a coach of like a college or a professional football team, right? You're as only good as your last game, right? Yeah. So, if I start dropping the ball a whole bunch and we start seeing numbers going down or we're not delivering some stuff, I would have a short tenure. Luckily, we keep moving the ball forward, right? So that kind of keeps me there. But and no, I haven't really thought about who yet.
Yeah,
not really thought about who.
You've got some time, obviously, if we're still in the 10-year trajectory there.
Let's hope so. So.
I know, getting paintball on TV was one of your goals coming into this role, and then obviously getting it live and growing it. What are some of the other goals that you want to achieve over the next 10 years, if that is the timeline?
I would like to leave it better than when I got it. Right. And so, and sustainable, right? That's a couple of the problems we've had in the past is we've created a product, whichever derivative it was, that wasn't that sustainable and didn't survive either the person driving to make it happen or whatever happens, right? So we've already had a lot of leagues come and go at the top level by this point, and none of them really sold or kind of been carried on. It just gets started over. So I would like to leave it better than I left it. I joke with the pro players, like I dream of the day that my next conversation with them is like an agreement with them as players, trying to figure out how much that I'm not going to pay them, right? That argument of them, like, I want $2 million, and I'm like, we're only giving you $1.5 million. That's what I want to be leaving under some type of contract negotiation with the players where they're demanding more money and I'm telling them it's too much. That's the kind of situation I want to be in. So
I'm sure you've got all the players rooting for you for that day to come.
Yeah, they are rooting for me for sure.
Yeah. If it's been a few years since you and I sat down and we did an interview, I don't know, it had to have been 3 years ago now. I think it was right around when Major League Paintball, the brand, came out. And we were talking about the Dynasty children's book that I wrote.
Yep, I have it right here.
And hopefully you read it every night.
Every night.
One of the things I'll never forget from that is I asked you a question and you said, wow, that was a really hard question. And now I'm going to ask you a question back. Right. And that question that I asked you is, what keeps you up at night? And, I think you talked about maybe at the time it was growing the sport, but 2 or 3 years later now in the present day with what you're doing now, what keeps you up at night?
Once again, trying to set it up again so that we don't have problems in the future. Right. So like whatever we do now, and we're always testing stuff and doing that, but you don't want to have something that has an unforeseen consequence 5 years from now. And that's kind of what keeps me up at night, because it's easy to get excited about something. And I'll go through like the traditional X ball, what like a lot of people think we're X ball, but there was an NXL before us that was traditional X ball. That was an hour-long match, 15 balls a second. And it had huge rosters and a lot of money was spent during that time frame. And let's say there was 10 teams. I don't know the exact number, right? But almost none of those people survived to today. And someone didn't survive that 3-year stint, right? Because it was so expensive and all the different stuff they did. They did a blackout. They did a bunch of stuff. And it really, I think everybody's hearts were in the right place. And at the time, it made perfect sense what they were doing. But in the end, it put us back a long time. And it took a lot of good people that had some money that were willing to invest it. They invested it in that, and then they lost it all. Now they're burned, and now they're gone, right? Now they're doing shuffleboard or something. So it's trying to see that 5 to 10 years down the line, like the problems we're going to face if we do something the way we're doing it now or the way we're designing it now.
Yeah.
So
that makes sense. And I think when you're at the helm that you are making these decisions, sometimes 4 or 5 years out, I think one of the questions that come up a lot when like format change happens, and I've heard Marcelo ask you this a few times, maybe not as specific as where I'm going to go, is when we go to potentially, let's hypothetically say next year, 2 years after that, the pro league becomes a 3-man league, right? Less paint. There's pros and cons of what does this mean for the paint companies? Does that mean they're making less paint? Does that hurt the industry as a whole? And so when you're making these decisions, are you talking to like industry leaders of, hey, I'm thinking about this. What impact would this have on your business?
Yeah, I do. I try to talk to everybody. And once again, you can't really, it's so hard because people are never going to see past their own personal needs. And it's not like Machiavellian, right? I'm not saying that they're planning that and kind of seeing that from their side. They're just never going to see it that way, right? If it's something that's going to benefit everybody, it's going to hurt them. It's just, they're not going to see it, right? Yeah. And so you have to talk to everybody, but you have to kind of also weigh in, why they feel the way that they feel, right? So for example, like I like 10 Man in the Woods, right? That's my favorite format on the planet, right? And part of that's because I couldn't play this format we have now.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously I'm going to like something that I can play, right? So that's kind of how everybody kind of sees it, right? So if I suddenly said, just the hypothetical, if I said, hey, we're all going to go back to, we're going to shoot pistols or something, and we're going to make them shoot, 1 ball a second, right? All the guys that have developed high-end tournament guns are going to be like, that's a dumb idea, right? Even though it may in the long run be better. And I'm not saying it's better. That's why I'm using something kind of crazy and outlandish, but they're just going to see that they made these expensive guns and then get a chance to use them. So like photographers, photography is a perfect example. When digital came out, all the film guys were like, this is never going to last, and this is trash, and this is an art, yada, 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 right? And all I thought was, I don't have to carry film anymore. Like how much better is that to not carry film? Because I wasn't that good at it yet. I wasn't an artist yet. You know what I mean? So I wasn't threatened by it. But people that have invested their entire lives in film, they hated digital.
Yeah.
So so that's kind of what happens in paintball. And so, and going to anything like, I saw someone post the other day, literally they were like, if you go to 3-man, there's going to be less opportunities for people to play pro. And he was a semi-pro guy and he was mad. And I'm like, 1, it's not my problem, right? That's yours, get better. But 2, like potentially the league could get bigger, right? Like we need to double this thing and then quadruple this thing and kind of keep this thing going. We don't want to keep it where it's at. So, there could be 4 pro divisions that are, 1 in each quarter of the United States. And so people aren't traveling and there's more pro players and, kind of stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I've heard there's quite the appetite to somehow get back to conferences. I think we did that a long time ago as we had conferences, and it created a lot of, rivals, right? It created a lot of inner state or inner region rivals. Now, I think the challenge that is some of these teams are flying people in from all over the country or world anyways. So it kind of makes that a challenge. But I totally see a world where we have different conferences or parts of the pro division that funnel into like the final top 5 or top 6.
Right. That's kind of like that's the traditional model, right? I mean, almost every other sport does it like that in some way because traveling's so expensive.
Yeah.
And that's an unforeseen consequence, as we talked about that earlier. Like, so when we started traveling the 5 events, and this is way before my time that we were traveling the 5 events, what they didn't realize at the time was everybody back then played local and we traveled to the event. So on my pro team and almost every pro team, there was no one from another state, unless you were in like the crazy Northeast where everybody kind of lives 1 mile from each other in different states. But like, you were from Northern California, you were Southern California, you were from Maryland, you're from Delaware, whatever, and you played like that. And then since we were all going to 5 places, everybody's flying anyhow, it didn't matter where the people came from. So people started picking people up from all over and basically building these, super teams kind of is where we're at. And now almost every team's a super team.
Yeah.
And if you go back in time, and let's use the fit model or the hurricane model, where they stayed and they're playing local and they're actually starting to see some success. If you went to a regional or a conference type system, maybe that would supersede that, right? And kind of make it so that people played more local and there was more of an advantage to that.
Yeah, I mean, just like every decision that you were having to make, there's pros and cons to it, right? Because like if Fit is now in a conference with maybe some smaller teams, obviously not the Texas teams, but maybe that's a bad example. Maybe it's like Seattle Uprising in like a bracket with Dynasty or somebody else. Like they're going to get destroyed for the first however many years. And that could lower viewership if it's going to be on TV, right? Like whenever you are on watching an NFL game, if it's a lower tier market, it's not going to draw as many eyeballs as, you know, the Raiders or the old Patriots or the Chiefs nowadays. So there's pros and cons to all of it.
Yeah, there's pros and cons to all of it. And we've actually found, like when we went to 20 teams, one of the benefits that is there's more parity, right? Because when you only have 6 teams or 7 teams, and then that 8 team comes in and moves into that slot, those 7 teams are the best in the world. They've just been playing against the other best in the world. And then when you come into that, it's a completely new ball game, right? It's like almost like a different sport, and you just get demolished in an unprecedented level. Now we're kind of easing them into it. You know, Leverage is playing NRG first, or New York Extreme or Uprising, and then as those teams kind of creep up the level, you know, nobody's really getting a whipping boy. And now, if you notice, from number 1 to 20, we're actually pretty close. I mean, there is no give me's anymore. I mean, it used to be in my era that, you know, the whole first day was a complete waste for the teams, right? Like you played people and there was no question you were winning those games.
Yeah.
And now every game is a nail biter.
Yeah. And that's the cool part about the league, right? Like even from a photographer's perspective is, even over the years, like I would see matchup like, oh, this is going to be a blowout. Like, all right, I'll go get a few pictures. But now it's, man, like some of these are a coin flip with how tight the games are and how tight the points are.
Yeah, I mean, I watched Leverage this last weekend. I'm a big fan of Leverage, but Leverage last weekend they played, and they Cincinnati, they played great, right? They never looked like they were trying not to lose. They were trying to win games, right? And that's a lot of times what you see the lower teams, and they're obviously the lowest. They came into that event 20th, and they're still playing to win. You know what I mean? Kind of making it happen. Sea Dogs did the same thing. I mean, I watched the Sea Dogs play. I mean, a couple good moves or a couple good calls, and they are moving their way through that. So good to see someone from Canada representing other than Impact.
For sure, right? And I had Chris Caputo on last week of Leverage, and he talked about that, of what it's like going from, you know, the semi-pro and up, and how it's now, hey, we're learning, and every event we're taking something away to just get just a little bit smaller. And not a lot of people knew this, but they had a lot of issues with their roster last event, getting people to the event. Right. So that's
and that's one of the things, like we have these huge rosters, right? And that's a problem, right? From a logistics point of view and a skill level thing. And that's kind of why the 3-man, I kind of like it. Like almost anybody could put a 3-man team and kind of have good people. Whereas when you start having to have, you know, your second 5-man line has to go up and play Ryan Greenspan. I mean, it gets harder to do.
Yeah. And if you have smaller teams, that also opens the doors for potentially outside sponsors now sponsoring teams, because it's less cost effective. So
it's a lot more affordable for the team owner as well, right? Yeah. You know, talk about flying 6 guys in instead of 11, you know,
adds up real quick.
Adds up real quick, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
Speaking of the brand, I want to ask one more question on that. I think it was really subtle, but it was a huge change. We saw the logo change during the ESPN event. You know, something posted of the revealing the new Major League Paintball logo, and it's more of the same crest, similar to what NXL is. Talking about that rebrand and the new logo.
So we were pushing the boundaries, obviously, with Major League Baseball, and so we had filed for a trademark, registered trademark, and we were on the last day, and they put a hold on it. So when you're in that trademark process, anybody that has a question about it can put a hold on it. So they put a hold on it the last day. So we did a meeting with them and kind of just talked it over, and they felt like it was a little too close. So we did a compromise. They released their hold on the name. So we got Major League Paintball that day. So we do have a registered trademark for the name. And then they just asked us to make some tweaks to the logo. And
was it more of the colors or like the player? What was it specifically?
It was, I mean, they, obviously we were talking to their lawyer, and he's pretty much on. He was like, it's the same shape, same color, little player. They got me on all fronts. So we went ahead and kind of changed it all around, kind of just to make sure we wouldn't have that problem again. Just kind of a good faith thing, you know what I mean? It's not like I heard people saying they sued us and all that stuff. It was actually quite nice, right? It was just like, hey, I think this is a little too close. I'm like, well, let's see what we can't do to change it. And so kind of that's where it went.
Yeah, and the new color, I think it looks incredible. I think we had the one that we did have. It was very professional. Obviously, looked a lot like another league, but the one we have now looks more. I don't know. It just feels more like paintballish. It's more like a shield that kind of matches the NXL vibe, but also getting away from calling it NXL because not a lot of people have to explain that when you talk to people.
It's a whole nother level of explanation for sure.
Yeah.
When you wear the Major League Paintball logo, I get stopped way more.
Yeah,
way more.
Yeah, totally.
I would wearing the NXL logo.
I've got 2 patches on my backpack that I bring to work. I've got the NXL patch and I've got the Major League Paintball patch, and no one ever asks about NXL, but they're always like, "What is this? Like, what does this mean?"
Yeah. So it's kind of funny that changed, but since then, I feel like we've definitely had a much better presence in the real world for sure.
Yeah. Have you ever stepped back and been like, "Holy shit! Like, I'm actually working and talking to people from ESPN and Disney, and I'm in meetings with Major League Baseball." Like, has that ever sunk in yet?
I mean, I still get excited about it. It's still cool, but I'm still an idiot. Like we went to the show in Monaco, which always sounds cool to say Monaco, but we went to a show that's where all the sports league are selling rights, right? That's basically like the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NBA, WWE, all those people are there. And so I went and I was changing all their like search engines to where our page came up first. I was to the home screen in the morning, and that was one of my funny things that they, when I went there, they'd actually searched our schedule. The NFL had. So when I went to their little booth and was typing it in, they'd already searched the Major League Paintball schedule for the next year. So I felt cool about that. But yeah, I was changing it so their home screen came up when I was there. So yeah, I'm still a little excited to be working with those guys.
Oh, that's so cool. Like, see, like a story like that it sounds great now, but like years from now, when Major League continues to grow, something as subtle as like changing that and like getting on somebody's radar will eventually find its way around. Yeah.
I mean, we actually had an ESPN deal to be on the Ochos right before COVID. And I like just straight up stalked the guy. I just stood outside their booth, just waiting for a down moment to run in there and go talk to somebody. And then with COVID, they were like concerned. Obviously, we couldn't do events during COVID. And so we were going to do something in Alabama. So that was our first time. But yes, once again, it was just, I was like hanging out like a stalker, hoping it was going to happen.
Oh, man. I was just listening to some podcast, and I forget what it was, but it was one of the larger ones. And they were talking about these 2 people. Maybe it was a musician. Yeah, it was a musician, some guy named Youngblood, who's very popular. And he flew to, I think, New York, and they were trying to, get him signed. And he was there with whoever, with his band, maybe a manager. And the person stood in an elevator all day, went up and down the elevator and just said, "Hey, have you heard about this new artist? His name's Youngblood. Like, you got to go check him out." And by the time this kid went to the meeting, the whole entire building had heard about him and was talking about him. And he attributes, he was like, "I wouldn't be here if it weren't for that person riding the elevator all day."
That's pretty cool.
Saying my name. It's like, it's that grassroots approach that you just did, right? Where you're making it easier for people to find us. And maybe that one thing is going to lead to something major.
Yeah. No, for sure. That's how it works.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Let's shift gears and talk about your support system. Obviously the first lady of paintball is very well known in the paintball industry at NXL events. What is it like to have her, one, and not only just in your corner, but 2, going to these events and helping run the league too?
It's well, one, it would be real challenging if she wasn't doing that, right? Because I'm gone so much, right? And it really is my life, right? Like everybody jokes about that, but it's like, if I go to a wedding, that's what we're talking about. I go to my family reunion, you know what I mean? Everybody there has worked for me or talking about paintball, right? So she would be pretty disconnected and kind of out of the loop a little bit, and would be frustrated. That's all I talked about. So it really helps that she's involved. It's funny. I made a joke here the other day because she was like watching a podcast, and she was like, "I'm just trying to get up to date." And I'm like, you live with me, you're listening to all my calls, right? Like we can cut out the middleman here. I can just tell you what's going on. But she's She loves it. She knows a lot of the people. She knows more people than I do actually in paintball. So it's good. It gives me someone to talk to about stuff, and kind of like she keeps it real for sure. But she's positive. I mean, it's a good thing. I think it would struggle if our relationship would struggle for sure. And it's good to have someone at home that's always in your corner. That's like, go get it. You know what I mean?
Do we? This is something that Amanda and I talked about, because I had my wife on my podcast about a month or two ago, and we talked about like some of the struggles that we have at events where, when people walk up and they see me, it's like, oh, hey, there's Shellda, like there's you, and you must be Mrs. Shellda, and like she kind of loses her identity a little bit. Do you ever experience that with her, where like everyone's just talking to you and you're the president and she's off the side, and like how do you bring her into that?
That's probably more of a question for her. She's pretty I'm trying to think of the term. She's pretty spunky, right? So I think she's pretty much in that conversation to begin with. Yeah, I don't think we have a problem with that, but it is, I mean, obviously people want to talk to me about whatever, right? They're pitching me ideas about formats, or telling me about the bad call, or telling me about the good call, whatever they're doing, right? But I think because she's so involved in it, it's not like there's a disconnect. She's listening to it, and she's obviously a realist. She keeps me grounded on all that stuff. So
yeah.
She sees the stressful Tom, right? So she knows I'm stressed, right? So yeah, so that part's good.
That's what I was going to say. Is she sees like the behind the doors things that we don't see, of like, oh shit, this is on fire. She helps you calm down.
She hears me talking a lot of crap in the shower. That's really what happens, because that's where I vent, or I have like the little Facebook wars that I don't really have. Like when someone says something, I write back my response in the shower, and so she hears that. So yeah, she knows more of it than most.
Since you're both like so deep into paintball, and obviously it's 24/7 for both of you, what do you do to like unplug and step away from it? That way you can come back fresh when you do have an opportunity to do that.
So I do wildlife photography. And so we typically take a trip at the off season right through Christmas. We're going to Botswana this year. I go to Botswana a lot. Cool. But yeah, I try and go away a place where my phone doesn't work. I think that's key. And just really disconnect to kind of do it. And I think I've been doing this a long time, right? I'm trying to think, since 1986. So however many years that is. And to come back every year and want to do it again and be excited about it, because you just can't. This is not like a quiet quitting type situation where you can just kind of go through the motions. And so I think that month really allows me that time to recharge and kind of come back and be kind of fired up. So my goal this year was to fish more. My predecessor fished a lot, and my goal was to fish more, and I've yet to fish this year. So I'm failing in my goals there. So, but yeah, that's why December is so important, that I kind of like disconnect and kind of do it. And I've done that forever. I've done it. I see people jokes about like my $1 million trips or whatever, but I'm like literally camping in Africa. And I've been doing it since I was a kid. I went probably in 91, first time to South Africa. So, so I've always done this. So it has nothing to do with the job.
Do you ever do anything with the photos that you take? Like, do you get those printed out or anywhere?
Not at all. I just hoard them. Hoard them in my house.
You got to like print those or do something with them.
Yeah, no, it's my secret. Just kind of do it. But yeah, I mean, at some point in time, I need to do something with them. I don't think my photography is that good. It's more the chase, right? I'm trying to get a picture of everything, right? So just more the chase. Every
photographer says that my photos aren't good.
Yeah, they aren't that good. They aren't that good. That's for sure.
Speaking of photography, talk to me about the media side a little bit. I think I had a lot of questions leading into last week, like, hey, are you going to the event? And I was like, no, I'm not. I think they're doing, Disney and ESPN exclusive. Talk to me about what your perception or how you view paintball media now, and what do we need more of from a media aspect in the coming years?
I think the media group is amazing, right? Like, I think they love paintball, and they're, y'all sometimes a little high maintenance. But for the most part, I think we have a good relationship. I love the media guys, right? I try and do what they need to kind of do a thing, because in the end, it's their product too, right? They're trying to put out a great product, and the better their product looks, they make us look good, right? So that part's great. And I don't think it's always been a great relationship, right, in the past, even with us, but the leagues before us, and even us in the beginning. And every time we go through one of these hurdles, like, when you deal with Disney, you realize how restrictive media gets, right? And that's one of the future holds more restrictions, right, for sure, as we get bigger. But I think it's great right now. And I think the media guys, I think we need to find a way to get you guys to make more money. So it's
Yeah.
not just a passion project. And everybody doing these podcasts will kind of help and kind of make that happen. But yeah, overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, I
Yeah.
think Alex did a great job trying to, mend some fences there and kind of make it a
Yeah.
good relationship.
Yeah, Alex crushed it. Everything that he did with the media, he just built such a family. And what I noticed, what I loved about what Alex did is every event I would see somebody new walk into the tent. I was like, huh, I don't know this person. And they're like, yeah, this is my first time on the pro field. And like he created so many opportunities for new photographers and videographers to get on the pro field for the first time to one, help their personal brand, right? Which is only a good thing. And so it's just been so cool to see that he created such this environment where now it's a huge family of just a lot of new faces blending with a lot of older, what I'll say more tenured media members.
Yeah, no, it's a neat thing we have going on there. So
Do you foresee any changes in that in the next year or so, like with how the media is handled or anything?
I mean, that's something we're still learning through, especially with the way that the rest of the world views it. As we, like the Major League Paintball thing, and as we get that and we start signing these deals, right? These deals are pretty, robust. They have a lot of restrictions on what we can do with the media and stuff like that. So there may be some changes along those lines, but it'll be a trickle as we learn what we have to do it correctly, right? Type of deal.
Yeah, that's what I've been almost telling people almost verbatim is when they ask me like, "Hey, what would you recommend over the next few years?" And I just said again, like, be as consistent as you can because we don't know what'll happen when one of these large deals strikes and what the media realm will change, because they're going to have obviously a more say in the content and how it gets handled.
Right, for sure. Not even a question.
Yeah. The one of the last things I wanted to talk about was by trade, I'm a project manager, for my real full-time job. And you kind of learn how to be lean with your business where, hey, how can I do more with less people, right? Or less
Yep.
resources. And I've really noticed that in the league, so many people wear so many different hats. And they're having to juggle so many different jobs. Talk to me about what that's like for you with your staff, because Alex was running what 5 or 6 different social media accounts, let alone running the whole media side of it.
Yeah, it's both a curse and a blessing, right? So the first thing that happens is you, everybody loves paintball that gets the job, right? So if you're, and I'm just gonna I'll pick on Alex since he's who we've been talking about, right? So he comes on board, and let's say he's in charge of marketing and media, but he still cares about format. He still cares about the location of the events. So we call it swimming across lake. Day painter's probably the worst, but everybody's so passionate about paintball that when they get in, even though they have a role to fill, they want to make a difference everywhere, which is great, which is why we wear so many hats, which is a challenge, though, when you're cutting other people off from doing what they're wanting to do, right? So it's like I said, it's great, and then sometimes it's a curse. So but yeah, we're obviously small. We're basically a startup, right? We're trying to grow this thing. We're not making a bunch of money, right? I think everybody knows that. And it's you're forced to wear a lot of hats to kind of make stuff happen. So
Yeah, that's where, like some people will kind of shit on paintball for that. But like I've looked at it from a different perspective of, man, you could gain so many life skills from being in paintball because it literally teaches you, if we talk about we'll talk about Alex Frazier, a different Alex for a second with Hormesis and Dynasty, right? Like not a lot of people know that he's designing a lot of products. He's doing customer service. He's doing logistics. He's doing operations. He's doing, you have to wear so many jobs or so many hats where a lot of people are focused in one aspect of that industry, not the whole entire part of it.
yeah, I mean, to be honest, that's one of the things that I've had to get better at is like letting people do their thing, right? It's very easy to be a micromanager, and I try to avoid that. I think most people would say that I'm not a micromanager. I let people do their lanes. You got Jason that does the rules and all that stuff, and obviously a lot of that overflows into what I'm trying to get accomplished. But especially during the events and stuff, it's on him, right? He makes those calls, right? And that's the same thing the owners do to me, right? They're really letting us kind of do that, but I have to let some stuff go. I can't worry about everything all the time. At some point in time, we get too big where it's just not productive. So, but it is nice to have gone through all those different phases to where, I understand what those people are going through, what can and can't be done to some level.
Yeah, one of the challenges I think I've learned over the years, just from my business acumen, is when you have one person like an Alex Sorensen who's wearing 5 or 6 different hats. If eventually that person moves on to a different role or leaves, all of a sudden it leaves such a huge gap of, oh shit, how do we fill this? And that's where like documentation and like writing down your processes are so important to grow. That way you have knowledge transfers between when people come and go or when the business grows. So if you guys aren't doing that yet, like start to write down your processes.
Smartsheet. I'll give a plug for Smartsheet. My guys will always make fun of me because I love Smartsheets. But yeah, Smartsheets is kind of the thing. Luckily, we haven't had, almost everyone that's left has been helpful after they left.
Yeah.
Right. To kind of really steer that. I don't think we've really got rid of Alex, right? He stepped down, but he's still doing stuff, right? Even Matt Ingles, everybody has kind of helped a little bit when they left to kind of ease the transition. Once again, everybody loves paintball, right? So it's a paintball first kind of world. So even if they may not at the time be happy with me or happy with the league or whatever, they still don't want to see paintball just fall on its face, right? And so that's kind of the good thing that we have going on. So
yeah, I love that, man. Tom, this has been amazing. It's been so cool to see you just open up about you as a person, your role as being a president and the different hats you have to wear, the pressure. I've got one other question for you from the previous guest, but before I do that, is there anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't covered yet?
No, I really would like to thank everybody that did good stuff for this event. It was like not just the teams, because they, like I said, that was a big ask to have them come out, but also all the shares and all the positive comments. I think there was 528 shares or something of our neutral post, right? That means a lot. It's definitely it shows that people appreciate what we're doing and we appreciate what they're doing, kind of like a whole thing. At least we're doing it for somebody, right? We're not just doing it to make a buck. We're trying to make this thing better. So I do appreciate that. So that's about it.
Yeah, it was cool to see just the whole entire industry rally behind it.
Yeah, no, it was great.
Awesome. Well, the last question I have, and this is something I do every week where it's a really cool way to tie in my guests. I have each guest ask a question for next week's guest without knowing who it's going to be. And last week I had Chris Caputo on of Leverage, who not a lot of people know, but he just became a FDNY firefighter. So working for one of the most prestigious jobs in the world. And we have him on the pro field. So it's so cool to hear players come on my show and they open up about their real life job. And it adds that human element to the sport that I think we've been missing a little bit.
Sure. I agree with that.
But the cool thing is, without knowing you were going to be on, he asked a really hard hitting question. So his for you is, where do you see paintball in the next year or two? And this is the part that I loved, is how do you see it moving forward and not backwards? Because I think we always talk about that. I was like, hey, how do we move the sport forward? But we never look at how do we not go backwards?
Yeah, Jesus, it's like he knew I was on here.
And he didn't. I had no, obviously we didn't know until a few days ago.
I would say, so I envision in the next 3 years, we will have some type of a TV type situation. That's what that looks like. I don't know, but I do feel like all the dominoes are falling in the right place and we are going to end up somewhere in the next 3 years. I feel like that's, as long as we keep doing our job and deliver a good product and we don't have any hiccups, I believe we'll be on TV in some meaningful way in the near future. As far as not going backwards and kind of how we grow this, an important thing that we need to remember, and it's something, we all have to do, even myself, I got to put myself in the shoes, is, and it's my spicy soup theory, right? So we all like paintball. We all love the product that we have. And we sit around and we're a little bit of an echo chamber. It's a large echo chamber. We're an echo chamber, right? And obviously the product we have is the product that we like. That's why we're here. And we have a hard time understanding why other people don't like it. So a lot of times when I'm making these changes or anyone's pitching these changes or whatever the format, we got to remember that these changes are not necessarily designed just for you. They're designed for the 53 million people in the United States that we missed, right? So we had 3 million people play paintball last year, but only about 17,000 of them play tournaments, right? So there's a huge number out there that we're not hitting. And so, where we may have to make some compromises or some changes to kind of bring in all those other people. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't stay true to our core, but that's kind of why I'm always pitching these separate, 3-man and X-ball, because you don't want to lose the And that's how you don't go backwards, is by not losing the people that are core. I mean, we still run 10-man tournaments. You know what I mean? 10-man in the woods, classic mechanical. We have X-ball, and now we're trying to do 3-man X-ball. We're trying not to ever lose what we got. We're just trying to add new people.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Yeah,
I appreciate
it. You're off the hook. You're off the hot seat now. You get to ask the question to next week's guest without knowing who it is.
I would say, what's your favorite format that you've ever played and why?
Awesome. That's a great question.
Thank you. I hope it's stumped somebody. So
I hope so. Like we've had questions. Folks have asked us some crazy stuff of like, is cereal a super chowder? People have asked like, what country would you want to have paintball in that we can't have it in now? So like the questions have been all over, which is incredible because it gets people to think.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. That one was like it was written for me though, wasn't it?
It totally was.
Yeah. So give him a plus there.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Tom, thanks again for coming on, and for everyone else tuning in. Thanks for tuning into another episode of the Shellda Podcast, and we'll catch you next time.
Appreciate it. Thank you.